this week's edition of Oswego Speedway Shop Talk, we sat down with 5-time Oswego Track Champion and 3-time Oswego Classic Champion, Otto Sitterly, in what turned out to be over an hour-long session in his beautiful shop in Canajoharie, New York. With upwards of 45 minutes of usable footage, we have decided to break this shop talk up into 3 segments, Part 1, 2, and 3. Part 1 will introduce you to Otto, his roots in racing, and his early years' success at Oswego Speedway, all the way up to his first championship in 2006. And after nearly 20 years of competition at Oswego Speedway, it was actually the dirt circuit that got Otto involved in auto racing.
Well, my father raced at Fonda Speedway from as long as I ever remember. Went to Fonda Speedway. That was what we did in the summertime. I was actually in high school and I built a small stock car and I raced at Albany, Saratoga. And I ran over there for several years, won a championship, won a lot of races, but it was just an entry level, class. And then I actually, my father helped me and we put one of his old modifieds, we put a sportsman motor in it, and I ran a couple seasons at Utica Rome and had a lot of fun. I liked it. 2-barrel, ported and open motor, so we had, they were really good power with big rubber back in the day. They had big tires.
After years of racing in his own backyard, Otto began to get the itch to try something different, and Oswego Speedway had always been in the back of his mind.
And the way I viewed it, I did, race a number of years here, but I was always at the track helping my father. And, not that I went to Oswego because I wanted my own identity, but I'm sure that to a certain extent, I sort of wanted to be able to, have my own successes. And, I did always read about Oswego. I always saw the supers. I went a couple of times. I was at Fulton Speedway the first time I ever went, and it rained out. So I opted to go up there. A buddy of mine and myself, we went up, and I want to say the first time was like 1990, and I watched, and there's no two ways around it. I was like, wow, these guys are crazy. I wouldn't do this for anything. And my buddy sitting next to me, he's like, you would be right out there if they let you. I was really intimidated. I couldn't believe when they turned the field loose for the feature. Because like one car going by, I was like, wow, these guys are really getting it. And when they turned to like 25 or 26 of them, I was like afraid. I was like, can any of them get up here and get in the grandstands? I was like, man, it was really intimidating.
Not intimidating enough, however, to keep Otto away, as in 1995 he made the plunge and returned to the Speedway as a driver.
I ended up going back and watching a couple other times, and I saw the small block supers. And then I actually was at the Parts Peddler one year, and Daryl Nichols had a car there, and I looked it all over, and he didn't end up selling it, and I got hooked up with him, and I bought the car and put it together. If that class was never in existence, I know that I would never went to the Speedway as a driver. It wouldn't have happened. It would have been impossible, because I raced for maybe 3 years in the small block supers, and I still looked at the other side of the pits and said, it's not obtainable. There's no way I can do that. I know what my financial status is, and I can't do that. And I just happened to get lucky, and I had the right people help me along the way, and I did good when I sold my car. And the furlongs helped me get that lined up with that first car, and I really only put several thousand with my money from my small block to get into a competitive big block.
After collecting 4 small block super wins in Oswego, Sitterly made the jump to the Novelis Super Modified division in the year 2000, driving a former Jeff West chassis. And it didn't take long for Sitterly to continue his successes in the big block division.
The second year, it was the Twin 30s, and we were struggling with the West car, just couldn't really get a handle on it. And we tried everything under the sun. I pretty much told Dwayne Harris was doing my tires at the time, and I told him before the first twin race for the night, I said, pretty much you guys, we know we're not here to win. I'm starting up front. I said, we'll go out and I'm going to give it everything I got, but we pretty much know that we don't have a car that's capable of winning. And, we pretty much were all on the same page. And we went out there, and I just ran I got the lead at the start, and I pretty much ran my line that I knew I had to run, and didn't do anything too crazy. And I pretty much was just waiting for somebody to slip by, you know how it goes. And I'm not sure if it went flag to flag. There might have been a restart or two. And just happened to hit my marks, and the car stayed pretty decent. And right at the end, I sort of didn't know, I didn't really give it much thought. I thought enough, though. I've watched it. I pulled way down to the left, and I knew to go to the right. You can't spin a super modified to the left unless you're going about 100. And I pulled it way down to the left, and I was only going like 15 miles an hour, and I turned it to the right, and I just put it to the floor, and the thing coughed like 3 times, and it sort of half spun and hit the wall backwards. But I didn't care at that time.
The dirt racing kid from Kanajahari was now a super modified winner at Oswego Speedway in 2001 and again in 2002. And along the way, Sitterly would move into a Mike Muldoon chassis, battling for championships year in and year out. And after building a very nice super modified resume along the way, it was in 2006 that the floodgates officially opened after Sitterly sat in a Hawk super modified for the first time.
Well, it was a pretty neat thing, and the very first time I sat in the car, the Furlong crew, you know, they would talk to me a little bit, Michael Sitterly, a couple of those guys. We went up on warm-up day, and I think I put tires on the car, and you sit so different in the car, it drives so different. I never drove a car with sweet steering, so there's a lot of feedback in the steering wheel, and then I just knew the potential of the car, so right from the beginning, I think we ran like 17 flat in practice. And those guys were like, "You've got to find a lot of speed here. These things are a lot faster." But, you know, I just was basically taking it one step at a time. And we come back the very next week, I want to say it was the Champaign Memorial, and we went 16-5 or 6 in the heat race, and we won the feature. And, you know, and then the rest of the season just sort of went that same way. If we finished, we pretty much won. And it was, you know, the car is definitely the right move.
After winning 6 out of 9 main events in 2006 and his first Oswego Track Championship as an owner and driver, Sitterly would be the odds-on favorite for the 2006 Budweiser International Classic. But unfortunately for Sitterly, instead of winding up in Oswego Victory Lane, he wound up in the back of the Speedway ambulance.
Well, I remember like a few weeks before the Classic, I remember the car getting freer as the season went on. And as a race would progress, it would tighten up, but it just seemed like the track was changing a little bit, and I didn't really adjust on the car enough to make a difference in that condition, I felt. So we time trialed. I think we were outside front row, and we had a good car. The car was loose for most of the race, so we faded back. And then I remember getting to about halfway, and we started to come forward. It started to burn the fuel off, and I knew the car by then well enough to I knew that we had a car, and I pretty much was looking at Furlong, and then Mike Ordway I knew was in there someplace. And I can remember I picked off a couple guys, and the next one in front of me was Gozick in Snyder's car, and I come off of turn 4, and I can remember applying the throttle, and the car was like on the straightaway, and all of a sudden it just took this, it didn't really turn, it was like a long, slow arc. And next thing I'm looking at the inside retaining wall, and for just a second, I knew I was in trouble. And I thought to myself, I don't think I'm gonna win the race. And then it hit extremely hard, and then I don't really remember too much after that. I remember waking up in the ambulance with my wife, and I knew it wasn't a good situation.
Sitterly would incredibly escape injury, and the original Hawk 79 would be repaired. But at the conclusion of 2006, Otto made up his mind that he was going to take time off from racing. That was until a phone call came that in many ways has changed the landscape of Oswego Speedway history.
Well, pretty much I went over my finances with, it was my wife and myself that financed the whole 06 season. We had no sponsorship money. So, I mean, with winning 6 out of 10 races, I went over all of my finances, what I would be able to do. If all of my results repeated what I did in 06, I couldn't afford to run. So I had a marketable piece, and I had just freshened the engine in the car. I had Joey do some work to the chassis, and I felt right then was my best opportunity to cash in and get my money out. So that's exactly what I did, and it was only a matter of a couple weeks. John Nicotra called me and asked what I was going to do, but pretty much before he made that call, I knew I was maybe not going to retire, but I was going to take some time off.
After looking as though he was going to be out of racing for a short period of time, Otto would team with John Nicotra in 2007 with the main goal of fielding a safe competitive race team for IndyCar star Davey Hamilton.
John called me because he thought I was a good mechanic, And, you know, he knew that I was honest and that I wanted to race, and I would do a good job with putting a car together for Davey. And that was really about it. We was really just to, you know, to put a car together. It was going to be safe. It wasn't going to fall apart. It was going to be competitive. And then we both would have went on our way. And now, 6 or 7 years later, you know, he's now, I think, looking at me more of a driver than anything else.
In our next segment of Otto Sitterly Shop Talk, we'll look back at Otto's success with John Nicotra Racing, specifically the 2012 season. And we'll also ask those questions that a lot of people have wondered about, including, are there really team orders with the Nicotra Racing team, especially on Classic Weekend? And we'll also explore Otto's mindset during the course of a racing season, including his aggressiveness. That and more on the next edition of Oswego Speedway Shop Talk. Keep an eye on OswegoSpeedway.com.